Tatiana Vladimirovna was urgently called to the emergency department. Her husband had been brought in unconscious after a terrible car accident, along with a child, also unconscious. The surgeon was frozen in shock. They had never had children before, but the biggest surprise was yet to come. Tatiana woke up to a gentle kiss on her forehead. Mikhail was already dressed, the scent of his familiar cologne filling the air, rushing toward the door. "Good morning, my love." Up early again. He sat on the edge of the bed, nervously adjusting his tie. "The operation's at 8 a.m. Where are you rushing off to so early?" Tatiana noticed he avoided her gaze, twisting the keys in his hand. "There's a lot to do at the site. See you tonight." He kissed her cheek hurriedly and left. "Misha," she called softly, "are you okay? You've seemed distant lately." "Everything's fine. Don't worry," he replied, already closing the door behind him. Tatiana lay back, staring at the ceiling. Lately Mikhail had been distracted and thoughtful. His phone always face down, unlike before. Sometimes, the car smelled faintly of baby wipes, small things that somehow clawed at her heart. On the kitchen counter sat a note next to an untouched cup of coffee. "Breakfast is in the fridge. Have a good day, my dear." It was the usual care, but today it felt strangely formal. The drive to the hospital took half an hour. Tatiana followed the familiar route, thoughts swirling. 15 years of marriage, 8 years trying for a child. How much money had they spent on clinics? How many tears had soaked her pillow after yet another failure? But Mikhail had always been by her side, supporting, comforting. Maybe that's why his recent oddness worried her so much. The hospital smelled of bleach and cold coffee from the nurses' station, where they stole moments of rest between rounds. A faint aroma of cookies drifted by. Someone had received a package. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed nearby. An elevator clanged on some floor. From the pediatric ward came muffled crying. A child was probably getting an injection. "Good morning." Nurse Sveta smiled brightly, carrying a stack of medical charts. "How are you? I have news. Yesterday's test showed 2 lines. A familiar sharp pain stabbed Tatiana's heart. Sveta had worked here only a year, but was already expecting a baby. "Congratulations." Tatiana forced a smile. "Take care of yourself." The quiet, cool atmosphere of the nurses' station was a refuge. Tatiana sat at the desk, opening the medical files. Work was the only thing that distracted her from thoughts of children. Here she was needed, respected for her professionalism. They pitied her childlessness. "Tatiana Vladimirovna, sorry to disturb you." Senior nurse Galina Petrovna entered nervously, clutching a folder. "The 3rd surgery tomorrow is uncertain. The anesthesiologist is sick. What do we do?" "We'll try to find a replacement. Contact nearby hospitals," Tatiana said, focusing on scheduling. Work kept her mind busy, giving a sense of control over life. Hours flew by with consultations, planning, and reviewing difficult cases, routine that soothed her. Her phone buzzed inside her coat pocket. A message from Mikhail. "Good morning, my love. I love you." Tatiana began typing a reply. "I love you too," but deleted it and wrote instead, "See you tonight." Why had it become so hard to speak of feelings when they felt like strangers living under the same roof? Suddenly the on-duty nurse burst into the room without knocking. Her face was pale, hands trembling. The chief doctor was calling urgently. "Something's happened. Something very serious." Her heart skipped a beat. Something always happened in the hospital. Something urgent. Something grave. But the nurse was experienced, battle-hardened. If even she looked worried, then this was serious. Tatiana stood up automatically, smoothing her coat. "I don't know much. They only said to find you immediately and bring you to the chief doctor." The walk to the chief doctor's office, 1 floor up, felt endless. Her heels clicked an anxious rhythm on the linoleum. Dark thoughts spun in her mind, a complaint about treatment, a medical error, problems with the department's license. Chief Dr. Tatiana Vladimirovna met her at the door. Compassion mixed with professional caution showed in her eyes. "Please, come in. Sit down." "What happened?" Tatiana stayed standing, instinct telling her not to sit. Bad news was better faced on her feet. "Half an hour ago, victims of a car accident were brought in," the chief doctor said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "Among them was your husband, Mikhail Petrovich." The world seemed to tilt beneath Tatiana like a ship in a storm. She grabbed the back of a chair, fighting to stay steady. "How is he? What happened to Mikhail?" Her own voice sounded distant, hollow, as if from the bottom of a deep well. "A moderate concussion, 2 broken ribs, multiple bruises." The doctor recited the injuries with clinical precision, but her eyes showed real concern. "His condition is serious but stable. There is no threat to his life." Relief crashed over Tatiana like a tidal wave. Mikhail was alive. He was alive. Everything else could be fixed, healed, survived. But then the chief doctor paused, gathering herself. "There's more," she said quietly. "A child was in the car with your husband, a boy, about 7 years old." Tatiana's thoughts tangled, refusing to form a clear picture. "What child? Mikhail who? Neighbors? Friends, maybe?" The chief doctor looked straight into her eyes. "The boy called your husband Dad. Several witnesses confirmed this. The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of hospital life outside filled the room. "This can't be," Tatiana whispered, her voice trembling. She pressed her hand to her throat, as if trying to hold back the words choking her. "We don't have children. We've been trying for 8 years." The boy was in the pediatric ICU suffering from a traumatic brain injury. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The chief doctor stood up abruptly. "Mikhail Petrovich asked to speak with you urgently. He says he has to explain everything." The corridor leading to the ICU stretched endlessly. Colleagues greeted her, asked how she was, but their voices sounded muffled, as if underwater. Tatiana walked on autopilot, nodding, barely hearing herself respond. One thought hammered in her mind. The boy called Mikhail Dad. The ICU greeted her with a familiar cocktail of sense medicine, disinfectant, ozone from the machines running non-stop. The air smelled like a battle for life, a fragile mix of hope and despair. Mikhail lay in the farthest room, hooked up to monitors. His face was pale, almost gray. A bruise the size of a chicken egg spread across his forehead, but his eyes were open alive to Nechka. He whispered as he tried to lift himself up. She saw tears glistening in his eyes. "Mikhail never cried, Evan, when his mother died." "Lie down, you fool," she said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her fingers instinctively checked his pulse at his wrist, a reflex that worked even as her world spun out of control. "You scared me to death." "Forgive me," he whispered, so quietly she barely heard it. "For what?" she asked, voice breaking for everything. "Forgive me. For what?" "For getting into an accident. For being reckless." She stroked his hand, barely noticing her own trembling fingers. Mikhail squeezed her hand tightly and she felt his own hand shake. "That boy Artyom, he's not just some random passenger. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you." Her heart stopped for a moment. "What are you saying?" "His name is Artyom. He's 7 years old." Every word was a struggle. Then he said, voice barely a whisper, "God, it's so hard to say he's my son." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Tatiana felt the ground slipping from beneath her feet, everything she believed in crumbling to dust. "What did you say?" Her voice sounded strange, distant, almost mechanical. "Tanya, let me explain," came the plea. Something inside her shattered, but she held herself back, lowering her voice to a whisper. Her colleagues worked nearby. She couldn't show any weakness. "Explain to me how you have a 7-year-old son I didn't know about for 8 years, please. Just listen." But Tatiana was already rising from the bed, desperate for air, for space to think. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, struggling to catch her breath. 7 years of blaming herself for infertility, swallowing hormones, going under the knife in hope of becoming a mother. Meanwhile, Mikhail had a son she had never seen. "Doctor, are you okay?" The nurse on duty peeked at her face, concern in her eyes. Tatiana straightened up, donning her professional mask. "Tell me, where's the boy?" "The one brought in with my husband to the pediatric ICU 3rd ward. Condition stabilized," came the reply. Tatiana rarely came here. Her patients were adults, but now something irresistible pulled her toward that room. The boy lay under in the 4th, surrounded by monitors. His face was pale, yet peaceful. A pristine white bandage wrapped around his head, dark curly hair falling softly, long lashes, a straight nose, an exact copy of Mikhail as a child, the same stubborn chin. "How is he?" Tatiana asked the attending doctor, not taking her eyes off the child. "A concussion, but no serious complications. He'll wake soon." The doctor looked at her carefully. "I'm family, friends," she lied. It was easier than explaining the truth. Tatiana Vladimirovna was urgently called to the emergency department. Her husband had been brought in unconscious after a terrible car accident, along with a child, also unconscious. The surgeon was frozen in shock. They had never had children before, but the biggest surprise was yet to come. Tatiana woke up to a gentle kiss on her forehead. Mikhail was already dressed, the scent of his familiar cologne filling the air, rushing toward the door. "Good morning, my love." "Up early again." He sat on the edge of the bed, nervously adjusting his tie. "The operation's at 8 a.m. Where are you rushing off to so early?" Tatiana noticed he avoided her gaze, twisting the keys in his hand. "There's a lot to do at the site. See you tonight." He kissed her cheek hurriedly and left. "Misha," she called softly, "are you okay? You've seemed distant lately." "Everything's fine. Don't worry," he replied, already closing the door behind him. Tatiana lay back, staring at the ceiling. Lately Mikhail had been distracted and thoughtful. His phone always face down, unlike before. Sometimes, the car smelled faintly of baby wipes, small things that somehow clawed at her heart. On the kitchen counter sat a note next to an untouched cup of coffee. "Breakfast is in the fridge. Have a good day, my dear." It was the usual care, but today it felt strangely formal. The drive to the hospital took half an hour. Tatiana followed the familiar route, thoughts swirling. 15 years of marriage, 8 years trying for a child. How much money had they spent on clinics? How many tears had soaked her pillow after yet another failure? But Mikhail had always been by her side, supporting, comforting. Maybe that's why his recent oddness worried her so much. The hospital smelled of bleach and cold coffee from the nurse's station. where they stole moments of rest between rounds. A faint aroma of cookies drifted by. Someone had received a package. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed nearby. An elevator clanged on some floor. From the pediatric ward came muffled crying. A child was probably getting an injection. Good morning. Dr. Nurse Sveta smiled brightly, carrying a stack of medical charts. How are you? I have news. Yesterday's test showed 2 lines. A familiar sharp pain stabbed Tatiana's heart. Sveta had worked here only a year, but was already expecting a baby. Congratulations. Tatiana forced a smile. Take care of yourself. The quiet, cool atmosphere of the nurses' station was a refuge. Tatiana sat at the desk, opening the medical files. Work was the only thing that distracted her from thoughts of children. Here she was needed, respected for her professionalism. They pitied her childlessness. Tatiana Vladimirovna, sorry to disturb you. Senior nurse Galina Petrovna entered nervously, clutching a folder. The 3rd surgery tomorrow is uncertain. The anesthesiologist is sick. What do we do? We'll try to find a replacement. Contact nearby hospitals, Tatiana said, focusing on scheduling. Work kept her mind busy, giving a sense of control over life. Hours flew by with consultations, planning, and reviewing difficult cases, routine that soothed her. Her phone buzzed inside her coat pocket. A message from Mikhail. Good morning, my love. I love you. Tatiana began typing a reply. I love you too, but deleted it and wrote instead, see you tonight. Why had it become so hard to speak of feelings when they felt like strangers living under the same roof? Suddenly the on-duty nurse burst into the room without knocking. Her face was pale, hands trembling. The chief doctor was calling urgently. Something's happened. Something very serious. Her heart skipped a beat. Something always happened in the hospital. Something urgent. Something grave. But the nurse was experienced, battle-hardened. If even she looked worried, then this was serious. Tatiana stood up automatically, smoothing her coat. I don't know much. They only said to find you immediately and bring you to the chief doctor. The walk to the chief doctor's office, 1 floor up, felt endless. Her heels clicked an anxious rhythm on the linoleum. Dark thoughts spun in her mind, a complaint about treatment, a medical error, problems with the department's license. Chief Dr. Tatiana Vladimirovna met her at the door. Compassion mixed with professional caution showed in her eyes. Please, come in, sit down. What happened? Tatiana stayed standing, instinct telling her not to sit. Bad news was better faced on her feet. Half an hour ago, victims of a car accident were brought in. The chief doctor said slowly, choosing each word carefully. Among them was your husband, Mikhail Petrovich. The world seemed to tilt beneath Tatiana like a ship in a storm. She grabbed the back of a chair, fighting to stay steady. How is he? What happened to Mikhail? Her own voice sounded distant, hollow, as if from the bottom of a deep well. A moderate concussion, 2 broken ribs, multiple bruises. The doctor recited the injuries with clinical precision, but her eyes showed real concern. His condition is serious but stable. There is no threat to his life. Relief crashed over Tatiana like a tidal wave. Mikhail was alive. He was alive. Everything else could be fixed, healed, survived. But then the chief doctor paused, gathering herself. There's more, she said quietly. A child was in the car with your husband, a boy, about 7 years old. Tatiana's thoughts tangled, refusing to form a clear picture. What child? Mikhail who? Neighbors, friends, maybe. The chief doctor looked straight into her eyes. The boy called your husband Dad. Several witnesses confirmed this. The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of hospital life outside filled the room. This can't be, Tatiana whispered, her voice trembling. She pressed her hand to her throat, as if trying to hold back the words choking her. We don't have children. We've been trying for 8 years. The boy was in the pediatric ICU suffering from a traumatic brain injury. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The chief doctor stood up abruptly. Mikhail Petrovich asked to speak with you urgently. He says he has to explain everything. The corridor leading to the ICU stretched endlessly. Colleagues greeted her, asked how she was, but their voices sounded muffled, as if underwater. Tatiana walked on autopilot, nodding, barely hearing herself respond. One thought hammered in her mind. The boy called Mikhail Dad. The ICU greeted her with a familiar cocktail of sense medicine, disinfectant, ozone from the machines running non-stop. The air smelled like a battle for life, a fragile mix of hope and despair. Mikhail lay in the farthest room, hooked up to monitors. His face was pale, almost gray. A bruise the size of a chicken egg spread across his forehead, but his eyes were open alive to Nechka. He whispered as he tried to lift himself up. She saw tears glistening in his eyes. Mikhail never cried even when his mother died. Lie down, you fool, she said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her fingers instinctively checked his pulse at his wrist, a reflex that worked even as her world spun out of control. You scared me to death. Forgive me, he whispered, so quietly she barely heard it. For what? She asked, voice breaking. For everything. Forgive me. For what? For getting into an accident. For being reckless. She stroked his hand, barely noticing her own trembling fingers. Mikhail squeezed her hand tightly and she felt his own hand shake. That boy Artyom, he's not just some random passenger. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Her heart stopped for a moment. What are you saying? His name is Artyom. He's 7 years old. Every word was a struggle. Then he said, voice barely a whisper, God, it's so hard to say he's my son. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Tatiana felt the ground slipping from beneath her feet, everything she believed in crumbling to dust. What did you say? Her voice sounded strange, distant, almost mechanical. Tanya, let me explain, came the plea. Something inside her shattered, but she held herself back, lowering her voice to a whisper. Her colleagues worked nearby. She couldn't show any weakness. Explain to me how you have a 7-year-old son I didn't know about for 8 years, please. Just listen. But Tatiana was already rising from the bed, desperate for air, for space to think. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, struggling to catch her breath. 7 years of blaming herself for infertility, swallowing hormones, going under the knife in hope of becoming a mother. Meanwhile, Mikhail had a son she had never seen. Doctor, are you okay? The nurse on duty peeked at her face, concern in her eyes. Tatiana straightened up, donning her professional mask. Tell me, where's the boy? The one brought in with my husband to the pediatric ICU 3rd ward. Condition stabilized, came the reply. Tatiana rarely came here. Her patients were adults, but now something irresistible pulled her toward that room. The boy lay under in the 4th, surrounded by monitors. His face was pale, yet peaceful. A pristine white bandage wrapped around his head, dark curly hair falling softly, long lashes, a straight nose, an exact copy of Mikhail as a child, the same stubborn chin. How is he? Tatiana asked the attending doctor, not taking her eyes off the child. A concussion, but no serious complications. He'll wake soon. The doctor looked at her carefully. I'm family, friends. She lied. It was easier than explaining the truth. Tatiana slowly turned around. The pain etched on Mikhail's face was so raw that her own bitterness softened, even if only for a moment. And you went? She asked. Yes. Mikhail closed his eyes, remembering Olga was frail, emaciated, bald from chemotherapy. Sitting beside her was a boy, Artyom. When I saw him, my heart stopped. He was a perfect copy of me as a child. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, even the habit of chewing pencils while drawing. Tatiana returned to the bedside but didn't sit. She crossed her arms, as if shielding herself from the story. What did Olga say? She asked. She apologized for hiding the truth all those years, said she didn't want to destroy our marriage. But now, with time running out, she couldn't leave her son without a father, and you agreed to be his father. I was already a father, I just didn't know it. His voice hardened. Tatiana, this is my son, my child. The words hung heavy in the air. Tatiana felt something twist inside, pain and a strange kind of envy. Mikhail had a child, a real, living son, and she had ... What? She did what she could that year, helped. Olga was too weak to work. Vera Nikolaevna lived on a small pension. Mikhail spoke quickly, almost defensively. I bought medicine, food, clothes for Artyom, paid the doctors ... Every weekend. Every weekend. Tatiana's voice cracked. When Mikhail said he was going to friends or fishing, he was really visiting his son, playing with him, reading to him. He was a real father, and Tatiana sat at home alone, envying friends with children. Where were you yesterday when the accident happened? Tatiana's voice was tired. Artyom was sick, high fever, vomiting. Vera Nikolaevna was scared and called me. Mikhail reached for a glass of water but couldn't hold it. Tatiana helped him drink without thinking. After the hospital they stopped. At a pharmacy. At the intersection. I didn't see the truck. You could have died, both of you. Tatiana shivered, imagining the scene. I know, he said, and I understood. I can't live like this anymore. Constant lies. Mikhail reached out his hand. Tatiana, forgive me. I'm a coward. For 8 years, all I thought about was being afraid of losing you. Tatiana looked at his hand but didn't take it. Too much pain, too many questions. And now, what do you want to do? She stepped back. I don't know. Mikhail lowered his hand, helpless. Vera Nikolaevna is old, sick, heart problems, diabetes. Artyom needs a real family. And you think I'll agree to raise another man's child, your lover's son? The words came out harsher than she meant. Mikhail turned pale. I'm not to blame for our mistakes. It's an innocent child who lost his mother and may lose the only family he has left, and I've lost trust in my husband. Tatiana turned toward the exit. I need time to think. The desperation in her voice was raw and unfiltered. How much time? I don't know, maybe for the rest of my life. Stepping out of the ICU, Tatiana leaned against the cold corridor, while, struggling to breathe, her chest burned with pain and betrayal. Colleagues passed by, casting worried glances, but no one dared approach. The head of the department looked unapproachable, as if disturbing her would only make things worse. Something pulled Tatiana toward the pediatric ward. Was it curiosity? Or perhaps a mother's instinct finally finding its focus? Artyom hadn't been sleeping. He sat up in bed, propped on a pillow, sketching intently in a notebook. His tongue peeked out in concentrations just like Mikhail did when drawing at home. Tia, doctor. The boy looked up, his dark eyes sparkling with joy. You're here. Hi, Artyom. Tatiana sat beside the bed, her voice soft. How are you feeling? Much better. My head only hurts when I turn too fast. Artyom showed her his drawing, the hospital building, and next to it, a figure in a white coat with kind eyes and a gentle smile. That's you, Tia, doctor. You save people, like Uncle Misha, he said proudly, as if knowing a superhero personally. Tatiana's heart clenched painfully. The child saw her as a hero, while she felt like a woman betrayed and broken. Artyom, tell me about Uncle Misha. How did you meet him? Tatiana took the drawing, studying the boy's careful work. His face darkened, his smile vanished. He came to us when Mom was very sick. Artyom put down his pencil, folding his hands in his lap. Mom was in the hospital, wasting away and always sleeping. Grandma and I stayed home and cried. Tatiana leaned closer. Yes, I was very scared. The boy spoke quietly, remembering Mom got so weak, her arms like twigs. She whispered a lot and cried when she thought I wasn't looking. Tatiana pictured a young woman fading away in a frightened child, and an unexpected wave of compassion swept over her. And then Uncle Misha came, knocked on the door, and told Grandma he was Mom's friend and wanted to help. Artyom brightened at first. I was scared. I thought he might take Mom away completely, but Uncle Misha was kind. He played with me, read me stories about pirates and dinosaurs, bought yummy yogurts and medicine for Mom. He counted on his fingers. He even made paper airplanes that flew really far. His voice brimmed with love and gratitude. Tatiana felt ashamed of her anger toward Mikhail, and when she died, Uncle Misha said he wouldn't leave me and Grandma. Artyom paused, staring out the window. He comes every weekend. We go to the park, eat ice cream. He always talks about you, about me. Tatiana was surprised. Oh, he says you have a wife who's a doctor, very smart and beautiful, who saves people. The boy looked at her intently. He said you're sad because you don't have children, but you want them very much. Tears welled up in Tatiana's eyes. That it turned out Mikhail had been telling his son about her pain, the pain she hid so carefully. Tia, doctor, are you crying? Artyom asked, concerned by her shining eyes. No, it's just my eyes tired from the bright light. Tatiana quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I know Uncle Misha is my real dad, the boy whispered, lowering his voice. Tatiana turned sharply to him. I'm not little anymore. I'm 7. Artyom shrugged solemnly. Grandma showed me Mom's pictures from college. I look a lot like Uncle Misha. Our neighbor, Aunt Cleva, always says, why don't you tell him anything? Because he worries and is scared. Artyom smiled with surprising wisdom. Adults sometimes think kids don't understand, but we do. They're often the ones who don't get it. Tatiana looked at this little philosopher and realized he was far wiser than many adults tangled in webs of deceit. Artyom, would you want Uncle Misha to be your real dad? The question came out cautiously, but the boy's eyes lit up with hope. Of course. Then we could all live together, me, Uncle Misha, Grandma, and you. He looked at Tatiana with a hopeful smile. And you're a doctor, Auntie. We'd be a real family, just like in my drawings. Why me? Tatiana asked softly. Because Uncle Misha loves you very, very much. He always talks about how kind and smart you are. Artyom's eyes shone with childlike sincerity. And I need a mom. I don't have one anymore. And you don't have children. Uncle Misha said you get sad because of that. His words hit her like a sharp pain, squeezing her heart but also melting something deep inside. Auntie doctor, could you be my mom? Artyom asked trustingly, reaching out his small hand to her. I promise I'll be a very good son. Just then, a nurse entered with a tray of medicine, breaking the fragile moment. Time for your medication, she announced cheerfully. Tatiana stood quickly, feeling tears welling up. I have to go work. The boy's voice trembled. Yeah, will you come back? He asked hopefully, not letting go of her hand. I will. Tatiana freed her fingers and hurried toward the exit, leaning against the wall in the corridor. Her heart pounded like she'd just run a marathon. The child's question echoed in her mind. Could you be my mom? Her phone buzzed a message from her best friend Ina. How are you? Heard about Mikhail's accident. Is everything okay? Tatiana's fingers trembled as she typed back. It's complicated. Can we meet tonight? The reply came instantly, of course. As usual, cafe on Sadovaya at 7. Thanks. The workday passed in a blur. Tatiana moved on autopilot rounds, consultations, meetings with nurses, but her thoughts were far away, on Mikhail, who had carried this secret for 8 years, on little Artyom, who asked her to be his mother, on her life which had been turned upside down in a single day. The cafe smelled of fresh pastries and coffee. Ina was already waiting at their usual table by the window. They had been friends for 20 years, since medical school. Ina had become a dentist, married a classmate, had 2 kids, and was known as the family psychologist among their circle. You look terrible, Ina said, standing to hug her. What happened? Is Mikhail badly hurt? Sit down. It's a long story. Tatiana dropped her bag and sank into the chair. Ina ordered coffee and listened carefully to the entire story, never interrupting, only nodding or raising her eyebrows. At key moments when Tatiana finished, silence hung over the cafe. So, what are you going to do? Ina finally asked. I don't know, Tatiana admitted, spinning the cold coffee cup in her hands. Part of me wants to file for divorce and forget this nightmare forever, but the other part. Her voice softened. The other part thinks about the boy. Ina, he's special, so smart, kind, wise beyond his years, and he asked me to be his mom. Ina, do you understand what you're getting into? Ina leaned forward, speaking seriously. That's someone else's child, the result of your husband's betrayal. Are you ready to see a living reminder of that every day? Or maybe it's not betrayal, Tatiana whispered, looking into her friend's eyes. Maybe it's a gift from fate. Ina, Mikhail and I tried for 8 years to have a child. How much money did we spend on clinics? How many tears did we shed? How many hopes buried? And now, you're being offered a ready-made child from your husband and his lover. Ina's voice was sharp. Tatiana, you're too kind for this world. Think about yourself. I am thinking about myself, Tatiana said, raising her voice, then catching herself and lowering it. I'm 42, I probably won't have my own children now, and here's a child who desperately needs a mother. At the next table, a young couple laughed carefree, their lightness a sharp contrast to the weight of Tatiana and Ina's conversation. What if Mikhail cheats on you again? What if he has other children? Ina asked the question Tatiana feared most. Then I'll divorce him without regrets. The response was firm, but gentle. First, we need to focus on Artem. He's not to blame for the mistakes of adults. Ina stared at her friend for a long moment, then shook her head with a worried look. The decision was already made. Double quotes. Yes, I know you, Tanya. When you speak like that, it means you've already made up your mind. Tatiana smiled sadly. Probably. Tomorrow I'll visit the boy's grandmother. I want to see the conditions he's living in. Talk to her and then, Ina pressed. I don't know yet. I'll decide as I go. At home, Tatiana stood under a hot shower for a long time, trying to wash away the weight of the day. Water ran down her face, mixing with tears she finally allowed herself to shed. On the bedside table lay their wedding photo in a silver frame. Young, hopeful, happy. Who could have imagined, 15 years ago, the trials that awaited them? Tatiana picked up the photo, tracing her finger over the glass. In the picture, Mikhail held her close, both smiling at the camera, convinced their future held only happiness. Her phone rang late that night, when she was already lying in bed, struggling to fall asleep. Mikhail. Tanya, how are you? Have you been to see Artem? His voice was tired but anxious. Yes, I have. What do you think of him? Does he know you're his father? Tatiana answered plainly, without preamble. A long silence followed. So long she thought the call had dropped. What did you say? Came a whisper finally. Artem figured it out a long time ago, Mikhail said. He says he doesn't want to upset you, so he pretends not to understand. Tatiana stared at the dark ceiling. He's very smart. Misha, God, Mikhail exhaled. In shock, so he's known all this time and stayed silent. For you. Another long pause. Does this change anything? Tatiana asked. I don't know. Tomorrow I'll visit his grandmother. I want to see the full picture before making a final decision. What decision? About our marriage, the boy, everything. His voice was weary. Write this down, Mikhail said carefully. After the call, Tatiana lay awake for hours, staring into darkness. Artem's words echoed in her mind. Could you be my mom? Strange. After all these years of trying for a child, she had always imagined a tiny helpless baby completely dependent on her care. But now, a fully formed 7-year-old stood before her, with his own personality, habits, childhood scars, and wisdom. Could she love a child who wasn't hers? And more importantly, was she ready to forgive Mikhail for this one chance to become a mother? There were no answers yet. But after tomorrow's meeting with Artem's grandmother, many things would become clear. Tatiana felt she was standing on the threshold of the most important decision of her life. Outside, the night rain drummed on the window with heavy drops. Somewhere in an old apartment on the edge of the city, a boy dreamed of a real family, a boy who asked her to be his mom, for the first time in years. Tatiana understood that motherhood isn't just about giving birth. It's about being ready to love, protect, and accept, even if that child entered your life in the most unexpected way. Morning dawned gray and rainy. Tatiana stood by her apartment window, clutching a slip of paper with an address, 17 Builders Street, apartment for 2. There lived the boy who asked her to be his mom. Coffee cooled untouched on the kitchen table. Sleep had eluded her all night. Questions swirled in her mind. How would she explain her visit to Artem's grandmother? What would she feel when she saw the home where Mikhail had played the father for 8 months in the hospital? Tatiana stopped by Artem's place. The boy was already dressed, sitting on his bed, swinging his legs. The bruise on his knee had faded. His eyes sparkled with playful light. Aunt Doctor, he beamed. Happy to see her. I've been waiting for you. They're taking me home today. That's good. How do you feel? Tatiana sat on the edge of the bed, automatically checking his pupils. Great. No headache. Artem nodded, turning his head from side to side. The doctor said I'm doing great and getting better fast. Who's coming to pick you up? She asked Grandma Vera. She come after lunch. Uncle Misha is still in the hospital. The boy's face darkened. How's he? He's getting better. They'll discharge him soon, too. Tatiana adjusted his collar with a motherly touch. Can I visit you sometime? Meet Grandma. Artem's eyes lit up like Christmas lights. Really, you'll come? He grabbed her hand. Grandma will be so happy. She always says she wants to meet Uncle Misha's wife, then we'll see each other at home. Tatiana smiled, feeling her heart pounding with excitement. Maybe we can go together. Artem looked up with hopeful eyes. Grandma hasn't come yet. But you're a doctor, can you take me home? This sudden request caught Tatiana off guard, but after a moment's thought, she nodded. That might be even better. The trip will give us time to talk, just the two of us. An hour later, they sat in a taxi crawling through the city's traffic. Toward the outskirts, Artem pressed his face to the window, studying the familiar streets. Aunt, doctor, are you afraid? He asked quietly. Afraid of what? Tatiana blinked, surprised by the blunt question. Of meeting our family, of becoming a mom. The boy's serious eyes held her gaze. I saw how worried you were yesterday. His honesty stunned her. She searched for the right words. I'm a little scared, she admitted. It's a huge decision. I don't want to make a mistake, and if you do, there will be pain. For you, for me, for Uncle Misha, and for Grandma. Artem nodded with understanding, surprisingly mature for his age. You know, before Mom died, she said sometimes the heart knows the truth better than the mind. He said this thoughtfully, staring out the window. Maybe you should listen to your heart. The wisdom of this 7-year-old philosopher struck Tatiana deeply. This boy had endured loss but hadn't hardened. He was wiser than many adults. The building was a typical gray Soviet-era block, paint peeling, swings crooked in the courtyard playground, a familiar scene of old memories. They climbed to the 4th floor. Artem pulled keys from his jacket pocket and unlocked apartment number 42. Grandma, I'm home, he shouted, kicking off his shoes in the tiny hallway. Tatiana followed him. Inside, where shuffling footsteps echoed from the depths of the apartment, an elderly woman appeared, leaning on a canty-eyed face but kind eyes that immediately assessed the visitor. Vera Nikolaevna, Tatiana introduced herself, extending her hand. Oh, my dear grandmother. Vera brightened, shaking her hand. Firmly, Artem has told me so much about you. Come in, come in. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with old furniture, shelves lined with books, family photos on the dresser. The scent of pies, valerian, and baby soap filled the air. A home lived in by an old woman and a child. In the corner, an old wall clock ticked steadily while music played softly behind the walls. Please, sit down, dear Veronica, gestured toward the couch. Artem, wash your hands and bring some tea. We have guests. The boy dashed to the kitchen, leaving the two women alone. An awkward silence hung between them. How is Mikhail Petrovich? What do the doctors say? Vera broke the silence first. He's recovering. They'll discharge him in a few days, Tatiana replied, scanning the room. Children's drawings on the walls, textbooks on the table. Here, Mikhail played the role of father, reading stories, helping with homework. Alone at home, Tatiana had blamed herself for infertility while he raised a son she never knew about. The thought stabbed like a sudden pain. Thank God, Vera Nikolaevna sighed, sinking into her armchair and setting her cane aside. Artem nearly died if not for Mikhail Vera's face grew serious. I need to talk to you about the boy. About the situation, Tatiana said, getting straight to the point. You know the truth. Yes, Mikhail told me everything yesterday and how angry you are. Her voice trembled with worry. Tatiana paused, carefully choosing her words. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. It hurts, but I'm not angry. Her eyes rested on a photo of a young woman on the dresser. That's Olga, my daughter. Vera followed her gaze. She was a good girl, just stubborn. After graduating, she worked as a designer. When she found out she was pregnant, I begged her to tell the father, but Olga was principled. She said, he has a family. I won't break it. She raised Artem on her own. We raised him together. I helped as much as I could. Her voice cracked. Then came the illness. She suffered for 2 years. Poor thing, we spent all our strength and money on her treatment. From the kitchen came the sharp whistle of the kettle. Artem was busy preparing tea. When it became clear she wouldn't recover, Olga asked me to find Mikhail Petrovich. She said, Mom, I can't leave my son alone. He should know who his father is. Vera smiled through tears. Mikhail came the same day. He saw Artem and knew right away he's his son. He apologized to Olga and to me. He promised to help. The grandmother put the photo back in place. He comes every week with Artem place, buys groceries, gets medicine. Artem returned with a tray, cups clinking but carefully balanced. Grandma, Aunt, Doctor, tea time, he announced solemnly, placing the tray on the coffee table. Well done, grandson. Vera Nikolaevna stroked his head gently. I forgot the cookies. I'll bring them now. The boy dashed back. A good child. Tatiana watched him with a soft smile. A golden boy, smart, kind, caring. Pride shone in the grandmother's voice. After your mother died, he grew up so fast. He helps me around the house, goes to the store, ... How did he handle the loss? Tatiana asked quietly. It was hard at first. He cried at night, struggled at school. Then Mikhail Petrovich came along, started tutoring him, taking him for walks. Artyom brightened. The boy returned with a plate of homemade cookies, sat beside Tatiana on the couch, pressing his shoulder against hers in a trusting gesture. Aunt, Doctor, do you like our home? he asked, offering her a cookie. Very cozy, Tatiana answered sincerely. Despite the modest surroundings, love and care filled the space. Want to see my room? It has lots of drawings and books, of course. The children's room was tiny but lovingly arranged. A single bed, a desk by the window, shelves stacked with books and toys. On the walls hung colorful drawings of family, home, animals. The floor creaked softly beneath their feet, and a pot of violets sat on the windowsill. Tatiana stopped mid, imagining Mikhail sitting on the edge of that bed, reading bedtime stories, helping with homework at the small table. A real father while an unsuspecting wife waited at home. This is my favorite drawing, Artyom said, pointing to a picture above the bed. It showed 4 figures, a man, a woman, an elderly grandmother, and a boy, holding hands and smiling. That's Uncle Misha, Grandma, and me, Artyom explained, hope barely hidden in his voice. This is our future family. Tatiana's heart ached painfully. This child believed so sincerely in the chance for happiness. And what if it doesn't happen? If we don't become a family? She asked cautiously. Artyom thought for a moment, sniffling. Then it will be sad. But I won't stop loving you. He looked at her with innocent honesty. My mother said love doesn't disappear, it just becomes a memory. The wisdom of those words struck Tatiana deeply. She crouched down, taking his small warm hands in hers. His skin was soft, with traces of colored pencils on his fingers. Artyom, you understand it won't be easy if I become your mom. We'll have to change a lot, get used to each other. I understand. He nodded carefully, afraid to shatter the moment. But I'll try, I promise. What if I'm too strict? Or not how you imagine? You'll be exactly who you are, Artyom smiled. Uncle Misha says you're very fair, and that's all I need. They returned to the living room where Vera Nikolaevna waited patiently, sipping tea. So, how do you like the place? She asked with a smile. Very much, Tatiana said, sitting back on the couch. Vera Nikolaevna, can we speak frankly? Tatiana asked softly. Of course, dear. Artyom, go play in your room, Tatiana gently told the boy, who obediently left, closing the door behind him. I know this is complicated, Tatiana began once they were alone. Mikhail deceived me for 8 months. That must hurt. The grandmother nodded sympathetically. But what worries me most is the boy. He truly believes we'll be a family. What if I fail? What if I can't love him like my own? Vera Nikolaevna was silent for a long moment, contemplating. Dear. Motherhood isn't just about blood, it's about heart, she said thoughtfully. I've seen biological mothers abandon their children, and strangers become the best moms in the world. But how do you know if it will work? You already know, or you wouldn't be here. Grandmother smiled wisely. Artyom is a special child. He's been through the pain of loss, yet he hasn't grown bitter. Children, like him, are easy to love. But what will happen to you if we take Artyom away? Vera Nikolaevna's face darkened. I won't hide it, my heart is fragile. The doctors say surgery is necessary, but at my age, she waved her hand as if surrendering. The most important thing is that my grandson ends up in good hands. You could live with us, we have an extra room. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears. My God, you're an angel. Artyom didn't hold back. He ran out to the children's room. Grandma, what's wrong? Why are you crying? He threw his arms around her neck. Nothing, my dear, just happy tears. Vera Nikolaevna pulled him close. Auntie, the doctor is a very kind woman, Artyom said, looking at Tatiana with hope. That means you've agreed to become my mom. The question hung in the air. Tatiana felt her heart freeze. This was the moment of truth, the decision that would change her entire life. She looked at the boy, so smart, kind, and wise beyond his years, then at the grandmother, who had poured all her strength into raising him, and finally at the drawing on the wall of a happy family. Artyom, come here. Tatiana reached out her hands. The boy stepped cautiously toward her. She hugged him tightly, holding his small warm body close. He relaxed in her arms, the scent of baby shampoo mixed with something unexplainably familiar. Suddenly Tatiana realized that motherhood isn't about biology, it's the instinct to protect, to love, to make someone happy, and she had that desire in abundance. Yes, she whispered, kissing the top of his head. I agree to be your mother. Artyom pulled back, looking into her eyes. You won't change your mind. I won't, I promise. The boy's face lit up like the sun. He hugged her tightly. Now I have a mama, real mom. He bounced with joy. Vera Nikolaevna quietly wept, watching the scene unfold. Thank you, dear. Thank you for giving my grandson a family. Tatiana felt something inside finally settle into place. It wouldn't be easy, and many challenges lay ahead with Mikhail, but the most important decision was made. She would have a son, not the one she dreamed of, but a real, living, loving boy who needed a mother. The ride home was silent. Tatiana sat in the taxi clutching a package filled with Artyom's drawings. Outside, gray buildings blurred past, but she didn't see them. In her mind, the child's voice echoed, now I have a mom. Her decision had been impulsive, driven by the moment. Now, as the emotions faded, questions flooded her mind. What had she done? Was she really ready to change her life so drastically? And how would she explain all this to Mikhail? At home, silence and emptiness greeted her. She switched on the light in the hallway, took off her shoes, and entered the living room. Everything was as it always was: white sofa, coffee table, bookshelves, perfect order in a childless home. She imagined a 7-year-old boy running around, toys scattered, laughter ringing, tiny footsteps tapping on the floor. Her heart tightened with a strange, unexpected hope. The phone rang, breaking her thoughts. Mikhail, how did the meeting go? His voice was anxious but hopeful. Good. Tatiana sank onto the sofa, unsure how to begin. Artyom is a good boy, and the grandmother is a wonderful woman. So, what have you decided? There was a long pause. Tatiana could feel the tension growing over the line. I agreed to become his mother, she said quietly. Silence. Then a heavy sigh. Tatiana, are you sure? I don't know. Maybe. The boy needs a family and I have the chance to give him one, she said slowly, as if convincing herself. We have a lot to discuss. Whatever happens, I'm ready for anything. See you tomorrow morning. Rest now. After the conversation, Tatiana sat alone in the quiet living room for a long time. Artyom's drawings lay scattered on the coffee table, bright bursts of childish creativity standing out sharply against the strict, elegant interior. One drawing especially caught her eye: a woman in a white coat holding a little boy's hand. Below it, the uneven handwriting read, "My new mom." A lump rose in her throat. That child believed in her, counted on her. Yet even she didn't fully understand what she was stepping into. That morning at work, everything felt like a blur. Her hands performed the usual procedures automatically, but her mind drifted elsewhere. Her co-workers exchanged worried glances. The head of the department looked exhausted and distant. Tatiana Vladimirovna, may I speak with you for a moment? The head nurse, Galina Petrovna, peeked into her office carefully. Of course, come in, Tatiana replied. Please don't take this the wrong way, but everyone's concerned. How's your husband? How's he feeling? Tatiana looked up from the documents on her desk and met the kind, concerned eyes of her longtime colleagues, people with whom she had shared years of joy and hardship. Thank you for your concern. Mikhail is recovering. He'll be discharged tomorrow. She paused, debating whether to say more. We're facing some personal matters, something very serious. We're planning to take in a child. Galina Petrovna slowly sat in the chair across from her, eyes widening. A child? At your age, Tatiana Vladimirovna, have you really thought this through? I've been thinking for 2 days now, she said with a faint, sorrowful smile. The boy is 7, an orphan. Oh my God. But your job, surely you realize everything will change once there's a child involved. This was the question Tatiana feared most. Her work wasn't just a job, it had become the purpose of her life. She had spent 20 years here. It was where she felt needed, respected, truly alive. And now, with Artyom in the picture, she'd have to rethink everything. We'll see. Maybe I'll go part-time, she murmured, the words sounding uncertain. Even to herself. Tatiana Vladimirovna, forgive my bluntness, but are you really ready to give up your career for someone else's child? The question hung heavy in the air. Someone else's child. That's where the root of her doubts lay. He's not someone else's, she said firmly. He's my husband's son. Galina Petrovna pursed her lips. So Mikhail Petrovich had children from a previous marriage, not a marriage, an affair. Silence fell, a thick, uncomfortable silence. Galina looked at her with a mix of sympathy and quiet judgment. My dear, are you sure you're doing the right thing, raising the child that came from your husband's betrayal? The child isn't to blame for the mistakes of adults, Tatiana replied, echoing Mikhail's words. But they sounded hollow, rehearsed. Of course he's not. But think of yourself. You're 42, you could still have a child of your own. 8 years of trying say otherwise. Galina stood and walked to the window. Outside, a light rain drizzled down. People with umbrellas rushed through the hospital courtyard. Tatiana Vladimirovna, I respect you deeply. You're a wonderful doctor, good person, but sometimes kindness can play a cruel trick. She turned, looking her straight in the eyes. That boy, he will remind you every single day of your husband's betrayal. Are you truly ready for that? The words struck right at the heart of her turmoil. Tatiana felt it, the quiet ache of a truth she hadn't wanted to face. I don't know, she admitted it honestly. To be honest, she didn't know anymore. After the nurse left, Tatiana sat alone in silence, staring out the window. The rain was getting stronger, blurring the world into a gray watercolor. Maybe Galina Petrovna was right. Maybe she really was making a mistake, one that could change her entire life. During her lunch break, she called her best friend, Ina. Tanya, how are you? Have you made a decision? I went to see the boy yesterday and I agreed to become his mother. There was a clattering sound on the other end of the line. Are you serious? Completely. Tatiana, have you lost your mind? We talked about this just yesterday. We did. And then I saw the child in his home. I spoke with his grandmother and I realized he needs a family, and you need your sanity. Ina didn't hide her frustration. Tanya, wake up. He's 7. He already has his own habits, his own personality, maybe even trauma. Are you really prepared to deal with all of that? I'm ready to learn, and what if it doesn't work? What if a year from now, you realize you'll never love him like your own child? Tatiana had asked herself that very question, at least 100 times in the last 24 hours. And every time, there was no answer then. I'll keep trying, she said softly. For God's sake, Tatiana. Ina's voice was now tinged with despair. You're destroying your life, your career, your peace of mind, your finances, throwing it all away to raise the son of your husband's lover. He's not her son. He's a child who lost his mother and needs a home. And Mikhail, has he at least offered to help support the boy financially? Tatiana paused. Money, they hadn't even discussed it. Raising a child meant food, clothes, school, medical bills, toys. I'll talk to him tomorrow. Tanya, please, I'm begging you. Think it over. Really think before you take this step. After the call, Tatiana's doubts only grew louder. Her friend had made good points. Artyom was someone else's child. His story was complicated. Raising him would take energy, time, money, and there were no guarantees it would work. That evening, Tatiana visited Mikhail in the hospital. He was sitting on the bed, dressed in regular clothes, packing his things into a duffel bag. The bruises on his face had faded. He was moving freely again. I'm being discharged tomorrow, he said with a smile. Doctors say I've healed up fine. That's good, Tatiana replied, taking a seat beside him. Mikhail, we need to have a serious talk. His smile vanished. He set the bag aside and turned to her. I'm listening. Yesterday, I made a quick, emotional decision to become Artyom's mother, but today I've started thinking about everything else involved. Tatiana spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. This is a huge responsibility, and not just emotionally. You mean financially, that too. A child comes with major expenses. Are we prepared for that? Mikhail nodded firmly. I have some savings, and I can take on extra work. We'll manage, and the apartment. We only have 2 rooms. Artyom will need his own space. There are options. We could sell this place and get a bigger one, or renovate. Tatiana could see he had considered a lot, but one question still remained the most important one. What about us? Our relationship? She looked directly into his eyes. Mikhail, you lied to me. For 8 months that doesn't just disappear. I know, he said, and I'm ready to spend the rest of my life making it right. Making it right for who? For me or for your son? The question caught him off guard. He paused, thinking carefully. For both of you, he said. Tanya, I know what I did was unforgivable, but this could be our second chance. A chance to become a real family. A family built on lies and betrayal, she asked. A family with room for love and forgiveness, he said quietly, reaching for her hand. I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life if you accept Artyom. But Tatiana didn't take his hand. There was too much pain. Too many questions still unanswered. I need time. How much I don't know. A day, a week, maybe more. Mikhail lowered his hand and nodded. All right, but remember Artyom is waiting. He believes in this. And that was the part that hurt the most. Tatiana pictured the boy telling his grandmother about his new mom, drawing cheerful pictures, dreaming of a miracle. I remember, she whispered. She spoke softly. Back home, Tatiana sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a sheet of paper. She decided to make a list of pros and cons, just like they had taught her in university for making difficult decisions. Pros: the chance to become a mother. To help a child, to build a real family, to forgive her husband and start over. Cons: the child is from her husband's betrayal. Huge responsibility. Financial burden. Her entire lifestyle would change. She'd have to abandon her career plans. No guarantee it would work out. The list of cons ended up longer. Her mind said one thing, her heart another. The phone rang late in the evening. Unknown number. Hello, Tatiana. This is Vera Nikolaevna. The voice of Artyom's grandmother sounded anxious. I'm sorry for calling this late. Good evening. What happened? Artyom's been restless all evening. He keeps asking, when will she come? Did she change her mind? I keep telling him everything's fine, but he senses something's wrong. Tatiana felt a painful squeeze in her chest. Children always know. Vera Nikolaevna, I just need a bit more time to think everything through. I understand. Dear, it's a big decision. But Artyom is so fragile right now. I'm afraid if someone lets him down again. Her voice broke. Tatiana realized that the elderly woman was hanging by a thread too. The illness, the burden of raising a child alone, the uncertainty of tomorrow, far too much for someone her age. I'll come tomorrow, Tatiana said firmly. I'll talk to him. Thank you. He'll be so happy. After the call, Tatiana stood at the window for a long time, staring at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in an old apartment on the edge of the city, a 7-year-old boy lay awake, dreaming of a mother. And here, in the silence of an empty apartment, a woman was trying to understand whether she was ready to change her entire life for the sake of that dream. By morning, she had to know the answer. Tatiana felt she was standing at the edge of the most important decision of her life. Her day began with a phone call. She was still in bed when her mobile rang. The caller ID showed an unknown name: Children's Hospital. Tatiana, Vladimirovna, this is the on-duty pediatrician, said a young woman's worried voice. A boy named Artyom was brought in. His grandmother said you're in the process of getting custody. Tatiana's heart dropped. What happened? A severe asthma attack. He's stable now, but the night was critical. He kept asking for you. Tatiana was already out of bed, scrambling for clothes. I'm on my way. The road to the hospital took 30 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Her mind swung from terrifying thoughts to desperate attempts at reassurance. At the hospital's reception, a nurse met her. Room 12. His grandmother is already there. Tatiana hurried through the corridor she now knew too well in the room. Artyom sat on the bed, pale, holding an oxygen mask. Vera Nikolaevna was by his side, holding his small hand. Aunt Doctor. The boy saw her and tried to get up but broke into a cough. Don't move. Stay down. Tatiana rushed over, instinctively checking his pulse. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. Artyom smiled faintly. I thought maybe you weren't coming. Why would you think that? Grandma said you were still thinking. And when grown-ups think too long, they usually decide not to. He looked at her with eyes full of fear. You didn't change your mind, did you? The question caught her off guard. Tatiana stared at this pale little boy who, even in the middle of an asthma attack, worried whether he'd be left without a mother. No, Artyom, I didn't change my mind. The words slipped out before she could process them. But the moment she said them, she knew they were true. She couldn't leave this child. Artyom's eyes lit up, double quotes, really. Really, but first, you need to get better. Vera Nikolaevna quietly wiped tears from her face. Thank you, dear. I prayed all night that this would work out. She stood up slowly, leaning on her cane. And now you're here. So God must have heard me what happened. Why the attack? Tatiana asked gently. He couldn't sleep, worried all night. By morning, he started struggling to breathe. The grandmother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. He's had asthma since he was a toddler. Emotional stress triggers it. After his mother died, it happened often. Tatiana nodded, understanding. Children's pain often finds its way through the body. A familiar pain resurfaced grief that settled not just in the mind, but deep in the body. Emotional wounds often left physical traces. Tatiana looked at him gently. Artyom, were you afraid I'd leave you too? She sat down on the edge of the hospital bed. The little boy nodded. I was really scared, he confessed. Mom died, and I thought everyone I love always leaves me. Her heart tightened. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to understand what it means to lose everything. But he did. He lived with it every day. Artyom, she said softly, taking his small hands in hers. Listen to me carefully. I'm not going anywhere, I promise you. We're going to be a family. His eyes widened. Uncle Misha too. Yes, Uncle Misha, me, you. She paused, smiling, and Grandma too. We'll all live together. One big family. For the first time that morning, Artyom gave a real smile. Then I'll get better really fast. Promise. By evening, the doctor gave permission to take him home. Tatiana had spent the entire day in the hospital, never leaving his side. His breathing had stabilized. He even ate with appetite. Auntie Doctor, he asked between spoonfuls of bland hospital porridge, when are we going to our new home? Soon, she said gently. But there's still something we need to take care of first. She was thinking about the conversation with Mikhail, the paperwork, the apartment. What do we need to do? Just boring adult things. Documents, papers. I can help. I'm big now. Tatiana laughed. He really was shockingly grown up for his age. That evening, the three of them drove to Vera Nikolaevna's apartment. Artyom held Tatiana's hand tightly the entire way, as if afraid she might vanish. The apartment smelled of borscht and freshly baked pastries. Despite the morning's anxiety, Grandma had managed to prepare a full celebratory dinner. Tonight is special, she said as she laid the table. Artyomushka finally has a mother. Over dinner the boy chattered endlessly, his voice bubbling with excitement about the room he wanted, the books he'd read, how he'd help around the house, and I'll study really hard, he promised solemnly. So you'll be proud of me. I already am, Tatiana whispered, brushing his hair tenderly later. After he had drifted off to sleep, the two women remained in the kitchen over tea. Vera Nikolaevna, Tatiana finally asked the question that had haunted her all week. Do you think I'll manage? Can I really do this? You will, the older woman said without hesitation. You have kind hands and a kind heart. Most importantly, you already love that boy. How do you know? I saw your eyes. That morning in the hospital you looked exactly like a mother terrified for her child. Tatiana fell silent. She remembered the panic, the dread. It had been real, fierce and deeply maternal. What about the documents? How does this all work legally? We'll go to social services tomorrow, the grandmother said calmly. Mikhail Pet already started collecting the papers, and I'll write my consent for transferring my grandson into your family. She finished her tea with a soft sigh. I have only one request. What is it? Don't forget about me. Let me come visit my grandson sometimes. Tatiana leaned forward. You won't need to visit. You'll be living with us. We've already talked about this. The old woman smiled sadly. Sweetheart, I don't want to get in your way. A young family should live their own life. No one's in the way, Tatiana replied firmly. The apartment's big. There's room for everyone. Tears welled up in the grandmother's eyes. Silent tears of gratitude and relief. The next morning, Tatiana took a day off work and drove to pick up Mikhail from the hospital. He stood outside, a small bag by his side, looking rested and determined. How's Artyom? He asked immediately. He's okay. He had an asthma attack yesterday, but he's stable now. They walked side by side. Tatiana didn't look at him. Mikhail, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. I've made my decision. We're taking Artyom. He stopped in his tracks and turned to her. Serious? Are you really ready? I am that child. Needs a family, and I need the chance to be a mother. Her voice trembled with emotion. But I have conditions. She held up her hand to stop him. No more lies, ever. If there's anything else you're hiding, tell me now. There's nothing, I swear, and we start over from scratch. Whatever happened stays in the past, but from now on, we are responsible for this child. I agree, no matter what. They got in the car. Tatiana started the engine. Where to? He asked. Mikhail asked quietly. To your son. He's waiting. The car ride passed in silence. Both of them were lost in thought about the changes ahead. About the new life beginning today. At the entrance, Artyom was already waiting. He'd been watching from the window and ran out the moment he saw their car. Uncle Misha. The boy dashed forward, wrapping his arms around Mikhail's waist. You're better now. I am, son. Mikhail crouched down and hugged the boy tightly. For the first time he called him son. And the doctor lady said, we'll all live together. Now, is it true? She did? He nodded. So now we're a real family. Inside Vera Nikolaevna's apartment, everyone had gathered: the future parents, the grandmother, and the child who had finally found a family. Well then, shall we begin a new life? Mikhail put his arm around his wife's shoulders. Tatiana looked at Artyom, who was at the table drawing yet another picture of a happy family. She looked at Vera Nikolaevna, who smiled through tears. She looked at her husband, whose eyes were filled with gratitude and hope. We're beginning. She agreed. 6 months later, Tatiana stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the family. In the next room, she could hear what was helping Artyom get ready for school. A normal morning in a normal family. Mom, where's my pencil case? Artyom rushed into the kitchen in his school uniform. On your desk, where it always is. Tatiana smiled. That one word, Mom, sounded so natural now. Is breakfast ready? It is. Go call your dad and grandma. Artyom ran out shouting. Through the apartment, breakfast is ready. So much had changed in just half a year. They had sold their 2 apartments and bought a 3-room place in a good neighborhood. Artyom had his own room now. Vera Nikolaevna had a cozy bedroom right next to the kitchen. Tatiana had shifted to part-time work to spend more time with her family. It hadn't been easy. Artyom missed his mother at night and sometimes cried. Vera Nikolaevna had struggled to adjust to the new place. Mikhail was working 2 jobs to support them. And Tatiana. She was learning how to be a mother, slowly, imperfectly, but with boundless love. Good morning, family. Mikhail walked into the kitchen, tie in hand. Good morning, dear. Tatiana adjusted his collar and tied his tie, a familiar gesture, now filled with deeper meaning. Mom, we have a parent-teacher meeting today, Artyom announced, his cheeks full of porridge. Your dad will go. I have surgery. Okay, as long as someone's there. Marina Petrovna always asks about my mom. Tatiana smiled. The teacher had struggled at first to accept that Artyom now had a foster mother, but the boy proudly told everyone, my mom's a doctor. Grandma, breakfast. Artyom shouted toward the bedroom. I'm coming, sweetheart. Vera Nikolaevna appeared, leaning on her cane. Her heart surgery had gone well, but she moved more slowly now. Good morning, Mom, Tatiana greeted her, helping her to the table. Over time, Vera Nikolaevna had truly become her mother-wise, gentle, loving, the kind Tatiana had never known. Her own mother had died when she was only 20. How is everyone today? The elderly woman asked as she looked around the table. Great, Artyom beamed. We have a math quiz today, but I'm ready. Good boy. And you, Tanya, you're not too tired. Not at all. On the contrary, I feel full of energy. And it was true. Motherhood, once terrifying, turned out to be the most fulfilling chapter of her life. Yes, it was hard. Yes, she had to juggle work and parenting, give up her free time and personal plans. But in return, she got what she'd always dreamed of, a family. Mom, can we go to the park tonight? Artyom asked, finishing his milk, leaving behind a white mustache. Of course, if the weather is nice. And can we get ice cream? Yes, but only after dinner, deal. The boy kissed her on the cheek and ran off to brush his teeth. Such a simple gesture, yet it always filled her with warmth. Thank you, Tanya, Mikhail whispered, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. For what? For giving us this chance, for becoming a mother to my son, for forgiving me. I didn't forgive, she said, turning to him. I accepted. There's a difference, but the result is the same. Yes, we're a family. Outside, the spring sun shone gently. The home smelled of coffee and comfort. Somewhere, water splashed in the bathroom was swashing up. Vera Nikolaevna hummed softly as she cleared the table. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary family. But to Tatiana, they were the most beautiful music in the world. She had once dreamed of holding a newborn in her arms. Instead, she was given a set boy with a personality, habits, and a past. But her love, maternal and true, proved stronger than fear and doubt. I'm ready, Artyom shouted from the hallway, backpack slung over his shoulders. Then let's go. Mikhail picked up his school bag. Goodbye, ladies. Goodbye, gentlemen. Tatiana and Vera Nikolaevna replied in unison. After they left the house, grew quiet. Grandma went to rest, and Tatiana began getting ready for work. In the hallway hung a new family photo for smiling faces, just like in Artyom's drawings. Looking at it, Tatiana understood something. Family isn't just blood. It's the choice to love, to accept, to stay, and she had made the right choice. A new day had begun, a day in a family that once seemed impossible, But love makes even miracles possible. And this miracle began with the simple words of a little boy, "Would you be my mom?" And she became one. Dear listeners, if this story touched your heart, show your support with a like and a subscription. Share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us and helps us keep creating new stories every day. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Stay happy.